Okay, so I actually had a very deep hips practice set up for today, which I think is really helpful in like fall when things are kind of getting very blown around. It's very grounding. Um, and for setting intention, I was, I was, there's all those like memes floating around the internet. One of them, a lot of my friends have been uh, sharing is I'm doing this challenge called October where I'm just trying to get through every day in October. Like, okay, I can get on board with that because that's sometimes all that you can do. I do too. I really do. Yes, yes. It's a beautiful day. I'm very happy. But that little meme reminded me of this time when I've been teaching for a long time at a lot of the big public studios, and one day I showed up, I was really frantic, I forgot my whole dharma talk and everything, and so I was like, "We're just gonna breathe and practice yoga today." And the one woman came up to me after class and she said, "I'm so glad that you didn't have anything profound to say today because I feel like the last dozen classes I took, the teachers have been like using this quote, 'What are you going to do with this one magic life of yours?'" And she's like, "I just haven't been feeling very magical or very profound or very intense lately. And I felt like I was just coming up short. And it was nice to just show up and be able to show up and just make it through the day." And letting that be the baseline. It's like we forget that, like, oh, this has to be the best ever, but not everything can be the best ever. It becomes monotone, and even that isn't any good. So, yeah. So we'll just, if it's the best, great. But if it's not the best, then yeah, we showed up and did the thing. All right. So we'll do a little bit of face brushing because I still think this is useful. So index finger and thumb together, going from the center of your forehead outwards, and then from the sides of your nose outwards, and then down below your chin, just kind of moving in and out, and then pressing your hands right between your nose and your mouth, kind of at the corners of your mouth. And then moving your fingertips underneath and behind your ears, massaging the soft spot and the bony spot. And keeping that lift from that point behind your ears and resting your hands down into your lap, closing your eyes if it's comfortable for you, and just taking a few deep breaths to check in with your body, checking in with your headspace. And then next time you breathe in nice and full through your nose, let out a big exhale through your mouth. Again, like that. For 3 ohms. Ah. 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 And then as you open your eyes and start to set up the first shape, we're gonna get right away into those big, deep hip stuff. So if you take one shin out in front of you where it kind of gets parallel-ish towards the front of your mat and then slide the other leg back, you're gonna start walking the body over towards that shin. Yep. Try taking the foot a little bit further forward, the front leg. Yep. And then we'll start working towards your shin, and then you'll pretty much right away hit that moment of resistance and then let that breath move into it. Early in practice, there can be a lot of like breaking up some of the connective tissue in there. Hi, welcome. So we're gonna keep just leaning forward into this Heru. And we're gonna be here for kind of a long time. And the benefit of being here for a long time is that it really keeps breaking stuff up. So if you feel like you have a little bit more room to go forward, you can always make that adjustment, or we'll be here for about another minute after this point. I'm just gonna shift my thing because I think it'll record a different one. Okay, there we go. And then taking 2 more deep breaths. And then walking yourself back a little bit, and you're just going to turn over towards your leg. So the leg that you have folded in, you're going to keep it folded, and we're just going to flip this leg over so that it goes out, and then go forward on the insides of your legs, and it's going to feel pretty intense in this hamstring. I'm just kind of seeing where you go. Pretty deep on that outer hip. Yeah. Good. 2 more exhales. And then walking it back, and you're just gonna shift to the other side so you can swing your legs around, or you can just turn over towards the other side of your mat. So it'll be the other leg that comes in. You'll have this one folded over. Wherever this leg gets is fine. It doesn't need to be super far away. We're just gonna start coming forward over this front shin. And it gets a little bit twistier in the belly to go over the thigh. So if you try to walk it over towards the shin, even though it's really hard to get that way, look at a little bit more into, yeah, a little bit more over towards the lower leg instead. Yeah. And it's intense. So if you went too far, just back it up. But yeah. Just spending that time being nice and soft into your breath. Have about 5 more breaths from this point. And keep letting that softness come in. Start walking your hands up, and then we're going to take this leg that's folded inwards and then go ahead and rest it outwards. So you've got kind of wide legs. The leg you were just going over is bent. Then you can start walking yourself forward, just seeing how much space is there. Deep breath in. softening as you exhale. One more time, deep breath in. Deep exhale. Walking your hands back, we're going to come onto our hands and knees, and we'll just be there for a little while, working through a couple of inner thigh stretches. So if you take one leg and extend it out to the side about in line with your hip, yeah, you might want to, yeah. And then reach the pinky toe edge of your foot down, so kind of getting that outer ankle line. And then if you start out to have space to bend into your elbows and let your tailbone roll up and get just a little bit more lift forward in your chest, so creating kind of an arc in the spine. Yep. One more exhale. And then come back up to straight arms, and you're gonna slide your right leg, or your whatever leg you've got extended, you're gonna slide it all the way across and behind you. And then you're gonna move that hand forward a little bit and get a little bit more stretch on the side of your hip. And just stay there through your exhale. So you release your knee back down and your hands come back in into your table pose, and it'll be the other leg that you'll slide out to the side. Yeah. So taking it out with the pinky toe edge of your foot down, so you get the outer ankle and the outer shin stretched. And then if you have the space to start bending your elbows, keep letting your tailbone reach up and back behind you, so you have a little bit of that kind of like cow pose curve in the spine. Deep exhale. One more time, deep breath out. And then draw that leg all the way back and behind you, so you have that little side stretch. Might even take the hand a little further forward so you feel that hip pressing out. One more exhale. And then coming back into table pose, and just work through a few cat and cow. Inhale, looking up, and exhale, rounding your spine. Just moving with your breath. Sending the heart forward. And then drawing the belly back one more time. And then coming back to center, you're going to bring your hands, another hand print further forward, and maybe even scooch your knees a little bit back. And then bring your heart as far forward over your thumbs as you can, and push strong into your hands. And then as slowly as you want to, and it can be not very slow because it's harder that way, you're just going to come down onto your belly. And when you get down there, wiggle your legs back behind you, take your arms back behind you, hold hands with yourself, and then peel your hands back and your heart forward, creating a little stretch into the front of your chest. One more breath in. And exhale, soften down. You can catch yourself with your hands, and then roll yourself over until you're laying on your back, bringing your knees into your chest. You can rock yourself around to massage the back onto the floor. We won't be here for very long at all. Take your right knee into your chest and go ahead and let your left foot drop down to the floor. You can let the leg be long or the leg be bent. It's up to you. It's whatever feels better. And just let your right hip crease soften, allowing the thigh to drop in closer towards your belly. And then you're going to keep holding on to your right knee with your left hand and guide the leg across the body so that you come into a twist. Take your right arm open, and then if you can get it open with your shoulder to the ground, feeling a really big stretch, feel free to go that far, or just go as far as feels good. Give yourself room to soften your belly every time you exhale. One more breath out. And then coming back into the center, you're going to come back to your back and then change out the leg. So grabbing your left leg and letting that right leg go as far away from you as feels good. And then rather than trying to jam your thigh in towards your chest, just let the hip crease soften. One more breath out. And then you're going to use your right hand to guide that knee across the body, coming into the twist, opening up your left arm as much as you can, really trying to focus on opening up that left side of your chest and then softening into your belly. One more exhale. And then coming back to your back, bring your knees into your chest. Rock yourself up to a seat, as many rocks as it takes until you get there. And then you're going to come to facing forward, and you want to have your block up by the front of your mat in case you want it when we get back up to standing. We're going to come into to downward facing dog or straight to a forward fold, depending on how your arms are feeling. So if you can come up into down dog, maybe walk through your heels just a little bit. Feeling the calves warmed up, feeling your hips roll around a little bit, shaking your tail in the sky. And then you're going to bring your feet up outside of your hands. They're going to come out pretty wide, maybe a little bit wider than your mat, and you can bring your hands to a block if that feels good, or leave your hands down on the ground, but really get a deep bend into your knees so your hips are back behind you. You have a bit of a squat going on that's hopefully not too hard, but you can still feel that weight going back into your hips. And one more exhale. And then you're going to bring your legs a little bit closer together. And you can have your fingertips on a block or on the floor, and you can have your knees very bent. We're going to start to reach the heart forward into that halfway lift. So it's that lift in the chest. Taking another breath in. And then exhale, soften it down. And then you're going to take your right leg and cross it back behind your left leg so that you have a little bit of extra stretch on the outside of your right leg. If you want more stretch, push into your big toes. If you want less stretch, push into your pinky toes. Let yourself relax with your exhale. And then uncross your legs and move to the other side. So you'll have the left leg crossed behind, and you'll push a little bit more into the pinky toes if you need to relax it, or more into the big toes if you need more sensation. And then after your next exhale, unwinding and coming back to a fold, and then bend into your knees, let your head relax again. And then you're going to slowly come up to standing, taking your time getting there, knowing that you'll have to give a little time to let the blood recirculate into the head. So we're gonna use the block. I'm gonna go this way because I'm gonna have my right foot forward and my left foot back, and I'm gonna use the block underneath my left hand. So you can stay up a little bit higher, or you can scooch your left foot back pretty far, just depending on how it's feeling. And then it's a little bit easier to do with your right hand on your thigh to come into the twist because you have a little bit more contact. But if you're feeling like reaching that right arm up in the air to come into the twist, you can do that. We want you to think of your right hip pulling back towards your left foot so you get a little bit more of that outer thigh space. One more exhale. And then you're going to bring both hands down to that block. And then if your back heel was up, you're just going to plop that back down on the ground. And you want to keep the same shape in your legs, but you're going to scooch that block over towards the left side a little bit. And then you once again have that drawing of your right hip, towards your back foot. But try to keep the bend into your front knee. So it's like warrior one legs. We have this little side stretch away from that hip. And then looking back at the front of your mat space, might bring your block forward. You're going to take your other foot, your left foot forward and come into a squat. And you can do with elbows on knees if that feels good, just giving you some space where you can lift your chest up and push those hips back. And then start to stand yourself up, straighten your legs, lift your arms up, bring your feet a little bit closer together, and then feel your hips going forward and your heart stretching up so you can stretch the front of the hips. Take another breath in, and then go ahead and relax it. And we'll move through the other side. I'm just going to keep switching the sides of my mat, but you don't have to. Just have your left foot forward in warrior one with your legs, or in the lunge. So if you want to have the back heel down, you can. If you have the back heel up, you've got a little bit more space. I've got my right hand down onto the block on the inside of my foot, or if it down towards the ground feels good, you can do that too. Just keep making sure that the left hip doesn't slide out to the left side, that it's pulling in towards your back foot. And then you either leave the left hand at your thigh or reach the left hand up in the air into your twist. And keep letting the shoulder open rather than the hand go back behind you. Softening the belly when you breathe out. One more exhale. And then both hands coming back down to the floor. You're going to turn the back heel down if it wasn't already. So now you have warrior one legs. And then you're going to move the block or your hands out to the right a little bit. But don't let your hips go back to the left. You need to keep pulling that left hip back towards, just like that. And it gets really intense in that outer thigh, doesn't it? The outer thigh and the hamstring really deep into the hips. One more exhale. And then coming back towards the front, you can move the block with you or not. We're going to step both feet up and come into a squat. And you can rest your elbows on your thighs. Pressing your hips back, feeling your heart lift up, feeling your collarbones open. And then start to stand all the way up. Reach your arms up, bring your feet a little closer together so you can feel the weight move forward into your toes. And the hips come forward and the heart comes up and the whole front of the body gets a big stretch. Until your exhale, when you let everything settle back down into neutral. And then we're going to open up into warrior two. So taking your legs as wide open as you like. We'll both go towards the right. Take the right toes out and then take the arms open. And see if you can get a little deeper into that front knee, like just an inch or so. And keeping that depth in your front leg, push down in that front foot. This should start to feel a little bit firmer and more tense. And then taking your heart up to your hand. So take your right arm and reach that one up. And we want to keep feeling this front thigh pulling towards the back foot as you slowly reach forward and come into side angle. Nice. So the whole lower body stayed steady. And keep pulling this thigh back. And reaching the pinky toe edge of that back foot down. One more exhale. And then reaching it back up. And just turn your feet towards the back of your mat so we can come into the same shape on the other side. Finding warrior two and then giving just that little extra space. And take your knee, it's turning in a little bit. See if you can turn it a little bit more towards towards the littler toes. And make sure to keep that front hip pulling towards the back foot and then take your left arm up towards your hand. Keep reaching upwards. Keep the breath moving. One more breath in. And then keep pulling that front hip back as you reach the arm forward and come out into side angle. So you'll take the right arm up and over now. Keep pulling that left hip back. You should feel it right underneath you. The right, yep, right pinky toe going down into the floor. One more exhale. And coming back up. Go ahead and come out of this shape. Turn all 10 of your toes to face towards that long side of your mat and just come into a fold that feels really good in your body. So you can just come on down, let your spine relax, let your knees bend as much as they like to. One more breath out. And then start to bring your hands back in, and you're going to start to come all the way back up to standing. When you get to standing, turn your heels in and your toes out. And if you want to shift so that you just have this wide stance, you're going to bend down into the knees and place your hands at your inner thighs. So you're pressing your knees out. Yeah. And I feel the weight in the pinky toe edges of your feet. So you're really rotating those legs outwards. Yep. And one more exhale. Go ahead and come on out of that, straighten your legs, and then bring your feet up towards the front of your mat. I'm gonna bring the big toe edges of your feet in to touch as close as you can get them, and then sit back into your hips so you come into chair pose. So you've got your hips pressing back, and maybe your arms reach up. If you wanted to lift your toes, you could because your weight's back in your heels, but you don't have to lift the toes a bunch. Just maybe check it. One more exhale. And inhale, straighten your legs, lift up. We're gonna go right back down on the exhale, and you're gonna start to move into a twist. So you can take your right hand to your hip and your left hand to your knee if you want, or you can take your elbow down, or you can bring your hands together, but keep pulling both of those hips back. Still weight moving back into both heels. One more exhale. And then look forward, unhook your twist. Go ahead and straighten the legs and reach up again. Take a big breath in. And then exhale, sit it back again. And then it's either hands or one elbow or palms together. And then keep reaching both of those hips back. And pushing down strong into both feet. Deep exhale. And then start to unwind yourself. Go ahead and stand up, reach both of your arms up. Feel the front of your hips press gently forward. And then resting your hands down at your heart. We're gonna do a little bit of twisting and a little bit of balancing. So we're gonna take both Revolve Triangle and Revolve Half Moon. And in Revolve Triangle, I've got the back toes turned out because it's kind of the same as Triangle. But in Revolve Half Moon, you take a journey of the block forward and then come up, and then there's a shift to where the toes face to the floor. And you don't have to lift them up off the floor. You can leave them down or just barely graze. But if they lift up, try not to let the toes go that way because then it's going to be even harder to twist the body around. Yeah. So start off your front leg, take your, okay. All right, I'll do it this way. Take your right foot forward and your left foot back. And it's like a shorter triangle, but kind of about there. Like if you were to go for warrior one, you'd have about that placement. And then having the block down in front of you, right about on the inside of your foot. And then we'll have that leg as straight as possible. It's okay to bend it a little bit in the Revolve Triangle because we really want to be able to rotate the hips. And then you're going to take your left hand down towards the block. And then this right hip is going to pull back, even if the knee is a little bit bent. And then as you look over to your right and you open the right shoulder, you get a lot of twist. If you wanted to reach the right arm up in the air, you can. But if you're starting to lose the breath, maybe making, yeah, that arm can go forward. It doesn't have to go right up to the ceiling. Mine never gets all the way up to the ceiling. Alright, and then you're gonna put a little bit of a bend into your front knee as you bring your hand back to your hip. Look down at the floor. You need to move this block so that it's forward at least a foot or so. And then you come to stand up on your right foot. And you can tap the left toes down for balance. Or, yep, you wanna come forward probably a lot more. Yep. And then maybe you lift the left leg, but you don't have to. Yep, and then you just wanna look over towards the right and feeling that twist. If you wanted to reach the right arm out to the right, you could. And one more exhale. And then both feet come down. Gently lift yourself up. There's a lot of twisting. Things can get really tense in the outside, so I like to give a good wiggle. And then other side. So having your left foot forward, we'll start with the block on the inside of your left foot, and you set up more or less like warrior one. That's a good way to think of with this revolve triangle, but then you have the straighter leg. Doesn't have to be totally straight, but it's straighter. And then your right hand comes down to the block, and you can start with your left hand at your hip because it's a good way to guide that hip back. And then you might start looking over towards the left or rolling your heart open or feeling this rotation in your spine. And if you wanted to take the arm up, you can, but it probably doesn't get anywhere near 6 o'clock, and it doesn't need to. The bigger movement is in the hips as you draw your front hip towards your back foot. Yep. One more breath out. And then release that twist. So you can look forward. You're going to bend into the front knee. You're going to hop the block forward, hop your back foot forward, and then hop the block forward again. So it's a good foot in front of your left foot. And then you want very little weight on your right toes or to lift the right toes up. And then you're going to look over towards the left. Maybe you roll the shoulder open. Maybe you reach that arm out to the left. Maybe you're even still breathing. Maybe. One more exhale. And then down into a fold. Go ahead and take both of the feet down. If you want to bend into your knees and put your ankles on your thighs, you can do that just to relax the back. Maybe wiggle your tush back behind you. And then draw yourself back up to a seat, to a standing. And we're going to come down into a squat. And I find that sitting on the block can be a really nice way to help relax the hips without making it too intense. So we're going to come all the way down to where you've got your hips down on the block. And then feet out wide. And it's a precarious journey. It's like finding the block. Like, is it there? No. And then hands together, elbows pressing. If it feels comfortable, you can close your eyes. Even though your hips aren't going to go anywhere because they're on the block, I like to think of my upper bum muscles releasing down. It kind of feels that releasing. It's like the whole pelvis just drops right down into that block energetically. Yeah. Ooh. One more exhale. And then you have to gently get yourself off of the block. I like to scooch back a little bit and come off of it. And then we'll bring feet together, knees out wide. You get as close as you want to. You don't have to be very close. And then sometimes there's a little adjustment of the flesh that gets us a little bit more steady. And then we're going to come forward into a fold just to whatever degree feels good, giving yourself softness with your exhales. One more breath out. And then bringing yourself up, we're going to grab the block and you're going to put it on its narrowest setting in between your feet. It takes a little adjustment, and then sometimes there's extra adjustment and the flesh. And then you want to feel it. You can hold on to your ankles, you can hold on wherever you like. You can't get that much pressure, but if you try to push your feet into the block, it creates this like wrapping out in your hips. So then coming forward as much as you can with that feeling, and it's going to be a different amount of forward. You just go forward as much as the body's willing to. We'll take 3 more breaths. And when you finish that last breath, you'll gently start to lift yourself up. Then we're going to take the block out from in between our feet, bring the feet back together, and just see how differently it feels to come forward again. They're not sure if it feels different from the first time you did it with the feet together. At least it might feel different than when you had the block in the middle of the feet. I just wondered, I was like, I wasn't where I was going to be tested on how this feels later. I wasn't going to remember. One more exhale. And then coming up, take your hands back behind you. I'm going to set up the feet kind of wide and just let the knees gently roll side to side. Nice and slowly rotating them around, and those hips that have been kind of sort of lobotomized by all of the deep work that we've done. And then bringing your feet maybe a little bit closer so they're just about hip width apart, maybe a little bit closer to your hips. Take your hands back behind you with your fingertips facing at least mostly forward, even if they're not all the way forward. And then draw your elbows back and press your heart up towards your thighs. You can let the head come back gently if that feels good to you. And one more breath in. And then let this soften. And then you're going to come down onto your back, scoot your hips closer to your heels. I'll turn the lights off in just a moment, but one thing first, we're going to come up into bridge pose. So wiggle your shoulders underneath your back and then press your hips up. If you can wiggle your shoulders in further and get up into a higher bridge pose, go for it. Keep pushing down into your feet so you can use that space that we've opened up in the hips, since we didn't open up a lot of space in the heart. And then maybe on one more inhale, you get a little bit more room to press those hips up. And then you can relax your shoulders and relax your hips down towards the floor. And then you're going to grab your block and we're going to do a supported bridge pose. And you want to be able to put the block right into the very flat part of your sacrum. So it's just above the squishy spots. Yeah. And then I will go ahead and turn that overhead light off. Oop. There we go. I know on the video we're a little bit darker, but it's just that space where the block comes in right underneath that flat part. It should feel very sturdy. It shouldn't feel like you're falling off in either direction, forward or back. Sometimes it takes a couple of shifts around. If you really want to scooch 1 foot longer in front of you to stretch out the front of your hip, you can, but sometimes that gets a little bit tense in the lower back, so you don't have to, but it's an option. I definitely like to do it just one at a time when I'm on the block like this, because it does get very intense, especially since we didn't really do a lot of back bending today. And then if you did have just the one leg out and you wanted to switch it out for the other side, gently, slowly making that adjustment. And then if you had one leg out, you want to come back to center. We'll meet with both feet planted, the hips just releasing themselves into that block. Let out one more exhale. And then start to push into your feet enough that you can lift the hips up enough that you can get the block out from underneath. And then go ahead and scooch that block off somewhere where it's not going to be in your way. Gently bringing the knees into your chest. Take your time getting there. Give yourself a little hug. Maybe rock around a little bit if that feels good around your hips and your back. And then open your arms. Drop your feet down onto the floor. Take your left leg and cross it over on top of your right leg. Use your right foot to press down and hop your hips a little bit over towards the left, but not a lot. And then as you twist over towards the right, you go as deep into the twist as you want to, as deep as feels good. You might even wiggle your shoulders around a little bit more so you're more open out towards the left chest. It's a pretty deep twist, so keep letting your belly soften. Make sure you're only going as far as feels good. One more exhale. And then start to come back to the center. Unwind your legs, scooch your hips back to center. And then take your right leg over your left leg and hop your hips just a little bit over towards the right side. And you'll move the legs over towards the left, coming into as deep of a twist as feels good to you. And then softening into that shape, letting your body relax, checking in if there are any points of tension and whether you might be able to let go of those. One more exhale. And then coming back into the center, unwind your legs, scooch the hips back to neutral. And bring your knees again into your chest, giving yourself a little hug. I'm going to widen the knees and come into happy baby, reaching up to grab onto your feet. Knees are wide outside of the armpits if you're able to get them that far, but in any case, just feeling this expansion in the hips, a gentle inversion, the body upside down for a moment. And then gently releasing your feet, setting them back down on the floor. Let them rest a little bit wider than your hips and let your knees fall against each other into that constructive rest place where the spine is neutral, where the pelvis is balanced. And if this feels like a good place to carry out the rest of your Shavasana to rest here, you can. If you'd like to slide the legs out long and let the feet flap open, you're welcome to do that as well. We've got a good long time to rest, to settle into this space. Let's go ahead and settle in and enjoy this rest before we wrap up together. And start to come back to your body, bringing some awareness back, taking some deeper breaths perhaps. As you start to wake yourself up, maybe even making some small movements. After a time, starting to roll yourself over to one side, taking a moment to pause and turn inwards in gratitude for having this practice and this time together. And then coming up to your own version of a comfortable seat. We'll seal practice releasing and own together. Deep breath in. Bowing down to the love and light that resides within each of our hearts. Namaste. Thank you. Good. I'm so glad. Well, lovely practice. Good to see you again, Ruth. They all are, aren't they? It's hard to have a bad time with yoga. I'm very dark now. Hi, Ruth.